Hello, and welcome to Scouting for Growth. I have the immense pleasure of introducing you to an extraordinary guest. Indeed, today, we will explore the journey of a trailblazer and innovator in the tech world, uncovering his pathways to explosive growth and his approach to scaling businesses. He's a serial entrepreneur, an avid Knicks fan, and a selling enthusiast, a man whose name has graced the coveted list of Forbes 30 Under 30 and Business Insider's Top 100 of Silicon Valley. This gentleman, who began his career as a field engineer, has transformed the face of his company and reinvented the world of security through artificial intelligence. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Saagar Govil, the dynamic chairman and CEO of Cemtrex Incorporated. With a tenacious spirit and unwavering focus, Saagar has led Cemtrex from its initial days of making under $3 million in revenues to a thriving powerhouse raking over $100 million in revenue with over 350 employees in 6 offices worldwide. During his tenure, the company has repeatedly earned its spot on the prestigious Deloitte 500 technology company list and has shown an astonishing growth rate of over 3,000% in revenue. Cemtrex, under Saagar's vision and leadership, is a diversified technology company that is relentlessly driving innovation in an array of sectors, including smart technology, virtual and augmented realities, advanced electronic systems, industrial solutions, and most intriguingly, intelligent security system powered by AI. In today's episode, I'm going to dive into the world of AI and security and explore Saagar's inspiring journey, mission, and passion for technologies from IoT to space tech. So sit back, grab your notebook, and prepare to be inspired, because this episode is a treasure trove of insights for those who are always scouting for growth. Hi, Saagar. Thank you for joining me on Scouting for Growth today.
Hi, Sabine. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, I'm really thrilled to have you because I heard about your credential as the CEO and chairman of Cemtrex. And I would love to start with a little bit of background and what got you to this role.
Yeah, so Cemtrex actually started out as a small family business. And over the last 10 years, we've spent the time really focused on driving growth. And we've been doing that through a lot of acquisitions. So when we started out as a company, we were a small environmental technology company, and we really struggled to grow in that industry. And so I found the best way to grow would be through acquisitions to get us into businesses which had bigger potential. One of the things I learned early on in my career was that sometimes it's not about how hard you work, but, where you're spending your time and where you're spending your effort. And so, if you're spending your time in a business that has higher potential, then you get more reward for all the hard work you put in. And so, over the last 10 years now, we've grown the company quite a bit through a number of M&A opportunities, building the business from, under 3 million in revenue to at its peak in 2017, we did about 100 million in sales, and then we divested some of those businesses. So we've restructured the company in recent times, and now we're on pace for about 55, 60 million in sales with our most recent acquisition.
Congratulations. And I'm actually intrigued by the word environment. I'll tell you, Saagar, it's because, we have this big theme around sustainability, and you mentioning that as a sector, when you actually took over, that might not have been a very lucrative area. Can you explain a little bit more what that means? Because sustainability is so important for us right now in finance.
Yeah. So, when I was in this industry, it was around 2008, 2009 in the environmental sector. And in the United States, at least, there just hasn't been a big appetite for environmental solutions in the market, right? So it's really only recently that that's kind of changed. But the challenge with what we were doing at the time was we were providing environmental monitoring solutions, and a lot of those products were driven by regulations. And so what that means is the EPA says you need to monitor certain levels of pollutants that you release into the atmosphere. So the challenge is that companies had, once they've adopted the regulations, the opportunity for growth is not there because it becomes a very mature market and it's just a replacement market. So that had, and then it's not like there's new regulations or increasing regulations in many instances, at least here in the United States. And so we found that to be a very challenging situation to grow a business in. And as a result, we decided that we wanted to be in different areas where the value proposition of your business is directly, driven by how much value you're creating for your customer, right? So if you're a power plant and the EPA says install this $100,000 worth of equipment to comply with the regulation, we're not making that power plant more efficient. We're not making them more effective. We're basically saying that they can check a box and not get fined by the EPA, right? So in those days, when you're trying to build a big business, it can be challenging to grow when you're sort of capped from that level, right?
Yeah, interesting. I mean, I can see you have expertise across a lot of different technology, Saagar, and I would love for you to explain to us and our listener what's your view around the changes around artificial intelligence and your focus on security as well at Cemtrex.
Yeah, so in recent years, Cemtrex has been operating in two business lines. One is in security and the other is in the industrial segment. So to answer your question, in the last several years, we've been really building our security business, Vicon Industries. Vicon has been a pioneer of CCTV. They were one of the first companies to bring that to market in the 60s. And now what you're seeing is a whole transformation of the industry as we look to adopt and implement AI solutions into the market. So the unique thing about what's happening today is that for the first time ever, computers can now see better than humans. And that's really what's changed in the market. And so what that allows is companies to use and leverage technology in a way that's never been possible before to drive better security outcomes, right? And that could be from preventing incidents from happening to responding to them better in real time, and then to more accurately apprehend, the suspects after the fact, after an event occurs, right? And so all of that technology can be used to make these security solutions far better and even more cost effective, right? And labor intensive. So that's really where we see at a high level kind of the opportunity here with respect to AI.
So it's interesting because, I work with a lot of financial service institutions and insurance companies, and we are always looking for new technology, new experts to start preventing risk to happen. You mentioned the risk of surrounding security and having proper security. And so we want to prevent it to happen, and we want to predict it as well. So that takes me into a question, which is, what are the biggest challenges you see Cemtrex and your two business units solving for within the sectors you are today working with?
Yeah, so I think with respect to how to make businesses safer, make organizations safer, AI is going to definitely do that. And even with respect to, let's say, your audience who's very concerned with protecting assets, I think that's very much doable in a way that's never been done before. So, cameras that had let's say advanced features, they would basically be triggered by motion in the camera, and then that would trigger events, alarms, things like that. The challenge with that is that, if a tree is swaying in the background, it's going to trigger these alarms, and it can make these tools very frustrating for operators, right? Now, with the advent of AI, you can track objects and specific objects more accurately and clearly, so that you can say, if there's an asset in the video frame, you can say, okay, if this asset is removed from this location, let somebody know, right? Alert, the security force and so forth. So to implement something like that is really easy out of the box today with our solution, right? And so for people who are looking to protect assets, or leverage insurance and things like that, there's specific ways in which AI can now make your assets safer. And that's example, whether it's, artwork, for instance, on a wall, or, specific, let's say high valuable machinery or something like that you want to protect. So all of, let's say it's inventory, companies' inventory, they want to secure that inventory more effectively. You can, using technologies to manage identity and personnel, you can make sure that, people, your guests who are on site are not lingering too long, right? And so you can drive specific tools to say, okay, we want to block off access to certain parts of the building when you have these types of guests on the premise. So these types of advanced functionality used to be very complicated to set up. And that's really what we aim to bring to the market. That's what we have the solutions today being able to do that much easier. And I think that, analytics and AI, advanced tools like this existed, but they were so difficult to deploy that companies were very frustrated. And, it's like when you get a new car, right? And they sell you on all these fancy features. And then you get, it's like the voice, it's like, oh, you can do voice commands, but it's like nobody ever uses those features, right? And so because it takes too long, it's too difficult. So it's a very similar kind of thing in our world, where you can be sold all these features, but you never use them, and so you don't get the value out of them. And I think that's really the biggest area where AI is going to change that.
What we are seeing with generative AI right now is that I feel artificial intelligence is moving to the business. So now, people like me who actually, I'm not a coder, I can actually understand what I can expect from artificial intelligence. So, which takes me, you are dealing with security and artificial intelligence together, Saagar. Can you give us, you already give us some example, but can you tell us, when you look at your two businesses within Cemtrex, what are the most likely use cases and scenario where artificial intelligence is currently being deployed within your group of companies?
Sure. So, within, I would say it's definitely within the security side. And that's really where we see the biggest opportunity, right? So security, unfortunately, the world we live in today is more and more dangerous than ever. And organizations need better and more sophisticated security. I mean, if you think about schools, for instance, most schools, like 95% of schools have CCTV. And yet we're still hearing about mass shootings taking place all the time. And it's just a tragedy. So that tells me two things: that A, the basic tools are already installed, and B, that they're actually just not that effective, right? And so, the ways that we can implement AI today to drive better outcomes, I think, is pretty apparent, in that we can do better with identity management using facial recognition. We can track who should be on a school at the right time. We can send out the right alerts for, if there's a disgruntled person that we don't want on premise, or we need to alert them. You could tap into databases like sex offender databases, and you could say, hey, this person is on the perimeter. We need to alert the authorities. This person shouldn't be here. And then also, having sort of a co-pilot, I think, is really possible. When you're talking about generative AI, we're also talking about large language models. And so when you have a security co-pilot that can understand the video that's being, what's going on in the video feeds, and then you can start to interact with that GPT or co-pilot, you can manage those security needs much faster, or in real time. And I think that's really where we're going to see the industry moving over the next couple of years, as these large language models become more sophisticated, and you can integrate them into these tools. And that's really the direction that we're headed as a company, is being able to, if you think about a school, they don't have sophisticated command centers like a prison or like a police station or something like that. So they need the most support you can get, and it's going to come by leveraging these AI tools and other types of deployment and solutions that can make it possible to look at people and understand, are they a threat? Are they not? Should they be on the premise? Should they be in this location or not? And you mentioned a word earlier where you said something about prediction. We can also, we see that as being a potential is, if you're, a staff member at a school, we know, okay, you're supposed to be on the premise between 8:30 and 5, let's say. And so, and between those hours, we have a generally pretty good idea of where you're going to be on the property. And so you can generally predict a certain pattern of behavior. And so the moment that you have somebody who's deviating from that pattern, you can start to trigger alerts and alarms and so forth. And so, like I said, this is where all the technology will be able to go. And privacy is also a big thing. And I think one of the things that we pride ourselves on is that we really want to be forward with respect to privacy. When you're on a private property, I think the organization should have the authority to implement the full set of tools available to them to keep them safe, right? And so there's ways to build these technologies that maximize people's privacy, but also ensure the safety of those that are, occupying the space at any given point in time.
You see, that's where I was going to go. I was going to ask literally this question around the fact that to be able to protect people and building an asset, we need to have the right data, right? When you look at the security platform you are building and the artificial intelligence, you need to make sure you have the right data at the right time in the right place. You mentioned schools. And actually, one of the startups I'm engaging with is building this insurance product for schools where they are going to use the security cameras and a number of asset, Internet of Things tools to enable a school to actually, if they're a case of a shooting, they are better prepared to actually prevent and mitigate the risk on the student. And the question I wanted to ask you is responsible AI. When you look at finance, when you look at insurance, we often talk about that's fine to do artificial intelligence, it's fine to use the right layer of data, structured, unstructured, to actually come up with an outcome. But how do we make sure that the way we use data is responsible? How do you do it at Cemtrex, Saagar?
So it's an important question that needs to be front and center. What we don't want is to turn our country or free countries that respect private property and private personal privacy to become they call it Big Brother. You don't want it to become like China, right? Where they, they can surveil you no matter where you are. They have access to all your data. So I think there's ways to build the technology in a way that does that, right? So you can ensure that people's personal data is not associated with, it's not being put in the cloud, let's say, in a way that could be compromised and that they could become vulnerable. So, for instance, we could, let's say, give you access to a building, we use your photo to build your credentials, but then we just throw your photo away and it's not stored on our servers anywhere, right? And so there's a way to engineer a type of credentialing, right, that allows us to do that without keeping private information for the long term. And I think that's just one small example, but we can bake that into all of the solution that we build. And so that's kind of how we approach it, where we kind of have this sort of zero trust type of approach where we don't want to, we don't want to keep anybody's personal information available. And I think that is a critical part of this, because in order, we don't want to turn schools into the TSA. We don't want, my personal opinion is I don't think that, clear backpacks are the solution, right? And so, and that's also, I don't want to sound overbearing, but I think, that's not really the best use of people's privacy either, right? Granted, kids are not, shouldn't be bringing harmful objects, but I think just in a general sort of way, we should be able to keep people safe without having to go through everybody's backpack every single day, right? I didn't grow up in a school like that. I'm sure you didn't either. And, so I think that's important. I think the technology exists to make people feel safe and respect their privacy at the same time. And I think it's important that we build solutions that allow us to do that.
So you already mentioned some numbers to us earlier on the scales of the business you've built. Some of the numbers I found is that when you look at Cemtrex, you have actually built that business from 3 million to over 100 million in revenue. So I'm going to ask you now some leadership question. What it took you to actually scale a business like Cemtrex through, I know M&A acquisition is being part of it, but I assume there's also a big part around people and building teams.
So I don't think there's a one answer to that question. I would say that there are a couple of things that I think about. So one is that after struggling for the first few years, I think I sort of have clear ideas in my mind, right? So one is that you want to be in industries where there are good sort of wins at your sales and in terms of the macro factors. So you want to be in a growth industry. Not all industries are growth industries. And so, like for instance, the environmental industry that we were in just wasn't a growth industry, right? The security industry is a growth industry, right? And that's why we continue to be excited about that opportunity. So I think just being in the right place matters a lot. And I think we quickly learned that that's a key factor. I think, on a personal level, it comes down to team, and the kind of people you hire and how you delegate. You have to, I always say, being a CEO is about, or being a leader is about empowering other leaders, right? And so in my role, I can't have all of the answers. I don't think it's possible. And so, I hire people who are really smart in their respective domains. And my job is really to empower those people to exceed as fast as they can and as effectively as they can. And so really, my job is to find the right people and give them the resources to succeed, right? And then also just tell everybody what direction are we going in. And I think that's really the ingredients. And so as you build your team and as you build your company, you have to put all of those pieces in place, right? And I think the other thing that, a lot of people can get really stuck on is, I try to build my businesses so that they run without me being essential for day to day. So, I think as you try to achieve scale, you need to be able to rise above and think 2 years out, where do we need to be? And you need to have a team that is focused on the next 2 months. And I think otherwise, it can be very challenging to scale. And I mean, that's, again, this is my personal perspective. I think it's important to just, because, it's easy to get really lost in the day-to-day. And I think without a clear vision of what you're hoping to accomplish and where you want to be 2 years from now, you're not going to be spending your time on the things that are going to move the needle as much as what really matters, right? So I always look at every week, I step back and I think, okay, what is the most important thing I need to get done to grow my business 20% over the next 2 years, year over year, right? And I think, and those are sometimes very long-term strategic initiatives that, could take 6 months to implement, right? And so being able to have that frame of reference, I think, is really, really critical.
And you actually highlighted some really important facts. I spend a lot of time looking at fintech, insurance technology numbers. And if I share some of the numbers with you, think about fintech. Fintech grew to, from an investment viewpoint, grew to 150 billion invested in fintech in 2021. In my sector, which is insurtech, was 18 billion. Last year, 2022, that went down to 75 to 100 billion for fintech. It went down to 8 billion for insurance technology. This year, it's going to half again based on the prediction. So we are a bit of a tough spot. However, when we look, and I look at security numbers, when I look at generative AI number, we are predicting something like $28 billion invested this year in generative AI alongside AI. And so your comment around looking at winning businesses is critical. And even in challenge industry, like we see right now, they can learn from, going into security. They can learn going into artificial intelligence as to how they can create efficiency and build new products and services to serve the need of the customer.
Yeah.
So Saagar, you have been working alongside a lot of technology in your world. I heard IoT, wearables, robotic, advanced electronics, and space tech as well. When you look at your everyday work at Cemtrex and the fact that you have to look at the 2 years horizon, what technology beside security and AI excites you the most?
Oh. So I think that the second biggest thing I'm most excited about is probably robotics. I think they're largely driven by the similar technologies, but I think the potential implications of robotics changing things is pretty exciting. And you know, I mean, not just even robotic security, you know, which could also be a little bit scary, but I think there's a lot of work that can be dangerous for humans, and I think having robots being able to do them more effectively, more cheaply, more safely is going to be really profound in terms of modernizing the workforce and enabling more productivity ultimately for this country and for the world. So I would say robotics is probably my number 2 thing that I'm most excited about. And I think we do a lot of work on the industrial side, and so I see robotics playing a critical part of that. But also in security, I think robotics can do more and more to keep people safe, and I think that's really exciting and really promising long-term opportunity. I mean, we're certainly probably a ways away from having everybody having a personal robot like Tesla is trying to do, but I don't think it's as far off as maybe people think. So, I'd say in the next 10 years, something like that would be possible. And that's pretty cool. Very exciting.
It's pretty cool. I mean, looking at robotic and security and, artificial intelligence, think about the Bill Gates and the Elon Musk of this world who think we should maybe stop development around artificial intelligence. What's your view around all the stuff happening in AI, and is this that dangerous? Should we actually stop development or look at development in different ways?
Yeah, I think it's a really important question as well. So my thoughts on this are, one is, I think there's, a lot of people have gotten concerned over artificial general intelligence because of ChatGPT and other large language models. And I think there's a big gap between what GPT is doing and what that ultimately is. And so I think people should be concerned about getting to general intelligence, but I still think we're a long way off from that. Now, I think there are a couple issues here. So one is that, even if you stop doing this in the United States, places that are more dangerous, like let's say Russia or China, are still going to be pursuing these initiatives. And so I don't think that it makes sense to necessarily slow down. What I do think is probably in everybody's best interest is to either build a consortium, right? So the same way that we had a consortium around nuclear proliferation, I think there's an impetus by world leaders to say we're going to develop AI responsibly, and so I think that's really important. To make sure that as a global community, we agree that we're going to deploy safe AI. And I think even without it being artificial general intelligence, there can be really profound risk. Even if you just have a really smart, if you think about what ChatGPT could be in 3-4 years, it would be very sophisticated. It could commit a lot of cybercrime, social engineering, fraud. I mean, it could, it can do lots of things. And so if we're not careful and we don't put some rules in place, things could get out of hand very quickly. And so I think I think the general fears about artificial general intelligence are a little bit overblown today. I mean, I think at some point, we'll have to deal with that question of, do you create an intelligence that's capable of doing anything and as smart as humans? But I think we're quite a bit away from that right now.
I absolutely love what we can do with artificial intelligence, and I teach myself, over the weekend around generative AI. And what I like is, we have this human in the loop. I'm here. I know my industry. I know my sector, and I can make the adaptation. I can make the changes to make sure that whatever is coming out is true to myself and to the industry. What always worries me, which is always, you have a dark side of things like the Black Mirror, where I find it so unnecessary, all this crime and this dark web and all the things we see, which is unfortunately the other side of the coin we see out there.
Yeah.
Which takes me to, a positive note. I read, Saagar, that you've been recognized by a number of prestigious platforms, and you are one of the Forbes 30 under 30. And you also have been in Business Insider's top 100 of Silicon Valley, I guess, entrepreneurs, businessmen. Can you tell us how you use those accolades and how they impact you? And that is to inspire the founders, the startups, which are going to listen to this podcast. And how do you motivate and inspire younger entrepreneurs to join us on this journey?
Yeah, no, thank you for that. So listen, what I would say is, I never did any of these things for the accolades themselves. I mean, it's certainly nice to be recognized, but ultimately, I'm really passionate about what I do. I'm really excited about what I do. And I would not rather be doing anything else. I have the luxury of being able to, work on things that really excite me. And so what my message or advice to other, young entrepreneurs is, don't worry if you don't get those things. That's not going to make or break, your success. Ultimately, it's about becoming an expert in the area that you're really excited about or that you want to be an expert in, and really truly understanding the space, and then starting to push the boundaries of what they're doing in that space. And I think, if you continue to hone your craft and really stay with it in terms of, building that expertise and that knowledge, I think, the rewards will come, right? And so it's just about being persistent and, and being, self-confident, I'd say, and not necessarily needing that, that third party recognition to validate you, and recognizing, having some trust in yourself to just keep going forward.
Very wise word, resiliency, and being focused on the outcome. I think that's the best one can do for oneself. What would then therefore be your word of wisdom for the corporates out there, Saagar?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of opportunity as far as building your business and growing your business. And I always look for, for me personally, I always try to look at a few different things. I think there's a saying by Warren Buffett, and it's just, and I was kind of alluding to it before, but it's really important to remember that it's not how hard you work, but, where you're putting that effort, right? And I think, if you channel all of your energy in the right place, you're going to get a lot more output than just, working hard for the sake of working hard. And I think that's some of the best advice I've ever gotten.
Thank you. And so my last question to you, Saagar, is where can we find you? If somebody wants to reach out to you, where do they go? Yeah,
sure. So you can learn more about the company at Cemtrex.com, Cemtrex.com. We're also listed on NASDAQ. CETX is our symbol. You can follow me on Twitter or LinkedIn. You can find more information about me at Saagar Govil is my Twitter handle. That's generally where you can find information.
Well, I'm very grateful for your time today, Saagar. Thank you for explaining who is Cemtrex and its businesses. Thank you for enlightening us on security and artificial intelligence and how we can actually leverage your technology to prevent and predict what may happen and also prevent it in the long term. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sabine.
If you like this podcast, subscribe now, share with your friends, and if you enjoyed it, please give it a 5-star review. Also, if you want to cover any specific subject with me, contact me on Instagram under Sabine VdL Officials or LinkedIn under Sabine VdL. Thank you.